Do we have anybody from any of our partners on yet? I know I saw Brandy. Scott Osicki, you on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's there. He's there.
How about Sue Nemeth?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm on.
Okay.
Present.
Sue. And
Good
then,
afternoon.
Ann, you on?
I'm here.
Okay.
All right.
Mike Dever?
Yes, he's on.
Okay, we're all good too.
Okay, everybody's good?
Excuse me,
All
Dan.
right.
Janine.
Hi,
I'm
Janine.
sorry. Hi, I just wanted to remind you about, it's a proposed substitute on page 9 of the packet before we get started for 0265. They're changing the end date for that one.
I didn't have anything like that forwarded to me, and I don't even have a page 9. I have 2 pages.
We can share it if you like when we get to the
Yeah,
item.
well, somebody will just have to explain it. That's all. I mean, it's not a
Okay.
big deal, you know. Okay. Cuyahoga County Council Committee of the Whole meeting is called to order on Thursday, December the 3rd, 2020. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher,
Here.
Mr. Shrine. Shrine is absent. Ms. Conwell,
Present.
Mr. Jones,
Here.
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Stevens,
Present.
Ms. Simon. Simon's absent at the moment. Ms. Baker,
Here.
Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Tuma,
Here.
and Council President Brady.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
Yes, Council President, we received 3 public comments, one from Tom Olmsted, Pastor Jawanza Colvin, and Ms. Lou.
All righty. All right, we have two significant items in front of us today. One, the long-awaited Diversion Center, and secondly, Behavioral Health Center. And we're going to go with the Diversion Center first, which involves ordinances 265, 66, and 67. Who is first, Madam Clerk? Would you read all 3 of the items, because it's really just one discussion?
Sure. Resolution number 2020-0265, making an award on requisition number 48968 to the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board of Cuyahoga County in the amount not to exceed $9,223,735.95 for the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Addiction Diversion Center for the period 12/8/2020 through 12/7/2022.
No, just sometime today, because she said she's letting her
Somebody,
out of town.
Sam McCurdy.
Sorry, Dan, I
Okay.
muted her.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Janine.
Okay. Resolution number 2020-0266, amending resolution number 2020-0098, dated 6/9/2020, which made awards on requisition number 48436 to various contractors in the total amount not to exceed $15 million for on-call COVID-19 emergency building modifications for the period 6/10/2020 through 6/9/2021. And resolution number 2020-0267, amending resolution number 2020-0154, dated 8/4/2020, which made awards on requisition number 48610 to various contractors in the total amount not to exceed $15 million for on-call COVID-19 emergency building modifications.
Okay. All right. Who is going to begin this discussion for the administration?
I will, Bill.
Okay. Okay, Bill, you're on.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody, because this is a very exciting day for Cuyahoga County. With council's approval, we are embarking on a criminal justice reform that is the first of its kind in Ohio. With ordinances number 2020-0265, 0266, and 0267 that authorize the county executive to enter into an agreement with ADAMHS Board to operate a diversion center at 1804 East 55th Street in Cleveland, and related buildings and related modifications to that building. Here are some simple facts. The odds of a serious mentally ill or substance abuser will end up in jail is 8-1. Treating mental illness and substance abuse in jail is much more expensive than treating illness at treatment facilities. Many of the chronic mentally ill and substance abusers end up in jail because at the time of their crisis, the options available to them are either jail or emergency rooms. This diversion center will allow people to be diverted from jail to the crisis center where they will receive treatment, and it allows for law enforcement to do a quick drop off at the center and get back on the streets. We estimate that between 300 and 400 people will be diverted from jail annually. This contract with ADAMHS Board is for 2 years at a cost not to exceed $4.61187 per year, and provides for crisis interventions training for law enforcement on de-escalation and recognizing signs of mental illness and substance abuse, a 24/7 helpline for law enforcement, and transportation for these individuals. The presenters that follow me will go into much more detail on these subjects. Additionally, at the first meeting in January 2020, we will be requesting 2 pieces of legislation, one to award a third party to monitor contract compliance at the diversion center. We hope one of the hospitals will be a responder to that RFP. And 2, legislation to create a board to oversee the operations of the center. We again anticipate that some of the executives from the hospitals in our town will sit on this board. The site at East 57th Street is intended to be a temporary facility to get diversion up and running as soon as possible until we locate a permanent facility, which we're currently working on. We recommend that we use $60 million of the opioid settlement money to fund this project. Approximately $4.6 million per year for the operations for 5 to 7 years, and up to $25 million to repurpose a permanent site to be a beacon of our community's commitment to criminal justice differently. Some of the upgrades to the East 55th Street site will be funded by CARES Act dollars. Obviously, only those items that qualify for COVID reimbursement will be used. It is our intention to use the new furniture purchased for the East 55th Street site at the permanent location when it goes online. We anticipate the upgrades to this facility to be completed by mid-February, and the facility to be fully staffed by Oriana and up for operation by April 1st, 2021. Brandy Carney will address council next.
Thank you, Bill. Let's hold our questions till we hear the entire presentation, and then we can ask all the participants to respond. Brandy?
Thank you, Councilman. Good afternoon, Council. Brandy Carney, Chief of Special Operations for Cuyahoga County. As Bill said, it's a very exciting and significant day for us today. Much time and effort has been given in Cuyahoga County around this intention of opening up a diversion center. Over the last year, I became involved in this project, and myself, along with many others, have spent countless hours, particularly over the last 8 months, with the goal of opening up a diversion center in Cuyahoga County as soon as possible. As so many of you know and have heard publicly over the last few years, our jails are now the de facto repository for individuals suffering from behavioral health disorders. I think Bill and I were both taken aback by this number because I too noted that the odds of a person with serious mental illness being in jail or prison compared to them being in a hospital are 8-1. 20% of jail inmates have a severe mental illness, and substance use disorders account for 63% of sentenced jail inmates. That's a national number. Our numbers here in Cuyahoga County mirror the national crisis. Reports from our jail healthcare administrators estimate that up to 50% of our jail population at any given time deal with severe mental illness or co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders. This project will send appropriate individuals directly to our diversion center for treatment rather than them even coming to our jail. This is for pre-arrest diversion. Not only does such an opportunity allow us to manage the current and growing number of inmates in our jail with mental health and addiction issues, it also reduces our jail population. More importantly, it gives individuals the opportunity to have their underlying or root issue addressed while staying out of the criminal justice system. for improving lives and as well as jail conditions. Many of these individuals in our jail often find themselves there and incarcerated as a result of their substance use or mental health issue. A large percentage of those who are arrested frequently are incarcerated and charged with nonviolent minor crimes, which were committed not because of a calculated intent to commit crimes, but instead their underlying mental health and addiction issues. Thus, providing treatment to individuals who need it for mental health and addiction is tackling this underlying problem. A little bit about the process and how we got here to date. Last year, Pulitzer, Bogard and Associates was hired as a consultant for this project. They have provided amazing expertise and knowledge. They have worked on other successful diversion projects, such as the one in Bexar County, Texas. This one has been very successful, and we have been in contact with them often throughout this process to learn from them what's worked well, what hasn't, what we could replicate here. In addition to Bexar County, we've reached out to other centers throughout this process for that very reason. We began this process last March and released an RFI, a request for information, to collect information. We released the first RFP late May 2020, and in June it closed. Soon thereafter, we put together an evaluation group that included many entities who have an interest in diversion. County Executive Office leadership, public safety leadership, common pleas judges, including 2 of the specialty docket judges, our county clerk, leadership from our Health and Human Services Department, County Public Works, and other leaders have been actively involved in helping us identify the best solution here. Excuse me, just 1 minute, I apologize. Thank you, sorry about that. Unfortunately, we learned in late July that of the responses that we received from the first RFP, the primary response that we all liked and we're moving forward to begin negotiations with, we learned from the entity that was providing most of the services that they would not be able to commit to what they had responded with. So unfortunately, what that meant for us is we had to reissue the RFP. We did reissue a second time and it closed on September 16th. We received 3 responses at that time, one of which was the ADAMHS response that's in front of you today with the contract. This is a 2-year contract. We worked very hard to identify a location that we could get up and use and operational for this diversion as soon as possible. It's difficult, as you guys likely know, to find not only a space that would work for us with the appropriate location, zoning, and availability, but we were able to find one. And this facility needs to be something that supports countywide law enforcement. So we need to make sure it has appropriate access, somewhat centrally located, things of that nature. We were lucky to find the site we're proposing on East 55th. The site requires slight adjustments and upgrades, as Bill mentioned, but will allow us to be operational by April 1. We're still working to propose a new facility that we would build out, which is one of the reasons for the 2-year contract here. As I mentioned, our current focus is to divert individuals pre-arrest to the diversion center. This is a unique and amazing opportunity for individuals to stay out of the criminal justice system and receive the treatment they need. Police responding to a scene will receive additional training in identifying and speaking to individuals with mental health and addiction issues. They'll be able to assess whether an individual meets the criteria of our program. As part of the project, the law enforcement countywide will have a 24/7 call-in line, which will be staffed by trained and properly credentialed individuals who will assist the police officer that is on site in assessing the individual needing services and determining whether they would be an appropriate candidate for our diversion center. The diversion center will initially have a total of 50 beds and provide acute care for individuals on site. They will receive detoxification and stabilization support for their mental health and/or addiction issues. This will be over the course of 5 to 7 days, likely, which is standard for detoxification for substance abuse. and possibly up to 9 days as a max for some of the mental health needs or mental health stabilization. Following that on-site initial acute need that's addressed, and once the individual is stabilized, the diversion center staff will then coordinate with other beds within the community to continue an individual's treatment. Currently, there are many long-term beds throughout the county able to meet these needs, particularly with substance abuse, which is a reason we decided not to duplicate all the longer-term beds on site at the diversion center. So again, instead, the staff, after they provide that immediate 5 to 7 or up to 9 day care for the individual, then our staff or diversion staff would coordinate to send that individual to another center. It could be at the other center for over 30 days, 90 days, up to 120 days, depending on their individual treatment plan, which is all part of the diversion center program that they started. The contract in front of you is with our Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board. ADAMHS does intend to subcontract with other organizations for some of the primary services as part of the center. The ADAMHS Board will provide management and oversight of the center and will also conduct crisis intervention training throughout Cuyahoga County for our law enforcement officers and dispatchers. This is training they currently provide in Cuyahoga County, but will be significantly expanded. We, as part of the contract, are including 3 additional staff for them because we want to make sure, our goal is to train as many police officers countywide during this contract period and for the CIT training. The ADAMHS Board intends to contract with Oriana House to staff and operate the facility. They're already established in the field and operate locally. Finally, the ADAMHS Board intends to subcontract with Frontline Services for the 24/7 hotline, which will provide the police support. We do have someone from each one of those organizations here today, so I can let them speak about the program they offer, but I would just add Frontline Services also currently staffs the 24/7 suicide hotline, so this would be an extension of that service. Additionally, contract terms include monthly reports and metrics that will be sent to the county. The board that Bill mentioned earlier, the community board that he mentioned that we will be establishing, our intention is to take those monthly metrics and data from the diversion center and share with the board. And so we can work collectively to identify, suggestions for changes, adjustments, possible expansion opportunities. So that's the forum or the process that we plan on using moving forward. As I mentioned, we do have 3 individuals, one from ADAMHS, one from Frontline, and from Oriana that can speak in more detail about the services that they'll provide, as well as Mike Dever for building services and changes. So if it's okay, Councilman, I would turn this over to Scott Osecki from ADAMHS Board so we can go over their piece of that.
All right. Thank you, Brandy. Scott, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you, Councilman and Brandy. So good afternoon, everyone. Really, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the ADAMHS Board's involvement in this diversion center initiative. Our board members and staff, they are so excited to be partners with the county on this major project that will improve the lives of Cuyahoga County residents living with a mental illness and or substance abuse issues through diversion from incarceration to stabilization and linkage to long-term treatment and supports. We really have to say it's been a pleasure to work with Brandy and Bill Mason on this project. Like Brandy was saying, there was a lot of us involved in it and a lot of conversations back and forth. So thank you for that. The ADAMHS Board, we review the diversion center as another and a very critical component of our behavioral health crisis service system. And that includes the psychiatric emergency room, crisis stabilization unit, and the 24-hour hotline crisis tech support, all of which are available to the folks of Cuyahoga County. Our role in the diversion center will include coordinating, contracting, oversight, evaluation, and fiscal accountability of the providers and services involved in the diversion center, which are functions that the ADAMHS Board now provides to the community with all of our mental health and substance abuse providers. Our Assistant Chief Clinical Officer, Maggie Tolbert, RN, who has been with the board for over 20 years, will take on the duties of the project manager and will be in constant contact with Oriana House on the workings of the Diversion Center and be able to offer any technical supports that would be needed. She will also work with our Director of Education and Training on the CIT training and our Chief Technology and Data Analytics Officer on the measurements and metrics of the project. She's also going to assist with the placement of psychiatric residents in the Diversion Center who participate in our Psychiatric Academic Liaison Program with the board currently funds with university hospitals. As Brandy said, we are going to use our best efforts to provide and expand crisis intervention team training to all law enforcement officers throughout Cuyahoga County. And that include the 40-hour CIT training, the 8-hour training to dispatchers, and an 8-hour annual refresher CIT training. So we are going to encourage law enforcement to make the decision of having their officers trained in CIT, since CIT training and buy-in from the police departments are very important to the success of the Diversion Center. The training will also include instruction on how to use the 24-hour police call-in line and the Diversion Center, along with written and electronic materials explaining the Diversion Center and the call-in number. As Brandy said, we're going to hire 3 dedicated CIT training officers, as well as an administrative assistant, to help our Director of Education and Training to coordinate and deliver the trainings. So right now, we're in the process of developing the training schedule to provide the 40-hour course twice per month, the 8-hour refresher course twice per month, and the 8-hour dispatcher training twice per month, but that'll be separated into 2 4-hour sessions. We met with the majority of law enforcement agencies before we submitted the response to the RFP, and we're working with them on responding to their request to offer some of the classroom training virtually and also live and or taped portions, especially now that we're still in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And another thing that we're going to be doing, which is sort of a value add, we feel, to the Diversion Center, is at the ADAMHS board, we're also going to subcontract with Lifelong Transportation or another transportation company. And that's to assure that once a person is discharged from the Diversion Center, that they would have transportation to go where they needed to go. So that's what I have, and I will turn it over now, if it's okay, Councilman, to Sue Neff, CEO of Frontline, and she's going to talk about that police call-in line.
All right, thank you, Scott. Sue.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, council members, and thank you for this opportunity. I am joined by Rick Oliver, the Director of Crisis Services, who oversees all crisis and trauma programs operated by Frontline Service. We may hear from him in response to any questions that may be asked later. As Scott indicated, Frontline will be operating the call-in center helpline for the Diversion Center. This helpline will be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to all law enforcement officers within the county who are encountering individuals with a serious mental illness, a substance abuse issue, or both. Officers will be able to access assistance through the call-in helpline by dialing 216-623-68888. For over 20 years, law enforcement officers have been utilizing this phone number to access assistance with behavioral health situations. Continued use of this number will eradicate any confusion which might have occurred had a second number been identified for use in diversion efforts. When an officer contacts the call-in helpline, call-in staff will be able to provide guidance and information regarding where the officer might access services for the person they are interacting with. Call-in staff may request to speak directly to the individual that the officer has encountered to obtain additional information. Following interaction with the officer and the individual, recommendations may include that the individual remain in the community. Call-in center staff would connect that individual to community behavioral health services. The officer would allow the individual to return to their home and, with the assistance of Frontline, follow up with those appointed services. A recommendation may be made for the officer to accompany the individual to the Diversion Center for assessment and appropriate linkage to treatment and services. Following conversation with the officer, the call-in center staff may dispatch additional assistance to the officer and individual, which may be a member of Frontline's trauma or crisis teams. And finally, call-in center staff may recommend that the officer take the individual to an emergency room for assessment and possible hospitalization because of the severity of their physical or behavioral health condition. The call-in center helpline budget supports 5 call-in staff, 1 person on each shift, 7 days per week. The call-in helpline staff will be unlicensed but degreed staff who will receive a minimum of 40 hours of training prior to answering the helpline. Training will include, but not be limited to, a comprehensive understanding of the diversion center philosophy, protocol, and operations, St. Vincent's Psychiatric Emergency Department and their 23-hour observation, a basic understanding of police protocol, and an understanding of the full array of community resources. Additionally, each call-in center staff person will receive training in trauma-informed care, client-centered services, suicide risk assessment, and safety planning. Call-in staff are able to access a licensed clinician immediately who will be able to offer a brief telehealth assessment when necessary. This type of assessment is clinical in nature and may be utilized to support the recommendation that an individual is appropriate for remaining in the community and receiving services at a later date. As mentioned earlier, call-in staff may ask the officer to speak directly to the individual they are interacting with. This year, Frontline upgraded our telephone communication system, now a voice-over internet system. This system can accommodate both audio and video interactions, making it possible for call-in center staff to not only talk with the officer and the individual, but to see who they are interacting with. It is our hope that we will be able to utilize this technology soon in our efforts with the diversion center. Finally, our upgrade of this technology was timely, as it was activated shortly before the pandemic. This voice-over internet system has made it possible for our staff to provide uninterrupted services remotely while maintaining communication and connection with supervisors and other teammates. It will certainly benefit the work being carried out at the call-in helpline for the diversion center. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I believe we are now going to hear from Ann about the diversion center operations at Oriana.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Ann, are you available?
Yes, Chairman Brady, Committee of the Whole, thank you for allowing me the time to speak with you. We also are very excited about this diversion center. My name is Ann Connell-Freund. I'm Executive Vice President of Operations, and I've been with Oriana House over 30 years. We have had the privilege of operating a drop-in and a detox center in Summit County for over 20 years now. So this is just something that's expanding onto that. This center will be behavioral health care based. It's not going to be a correctional facility. It's not going to be an incarceration type of facility. But we certainly are excited about working with law enforcement. Our goal is to have law enforcement, once they've been through Frontline and they arrive at the facility, to be able to drop a client off, give us some basic information, and then be able to get back to their public safety duties so that we have law enforcement back on the street as quickly as possible. Once somebody is at the center, we will have a central intake area. And regardless of whether they have a substance abuse issue, a mental health issue, or both of those issues, we will have the area and the staff there that will be able to do some calming, stabilization, and assessments. The staff is going to include working with physicians from university hospitals, as well as the resident program that the ADM board already has up and running. We're also going to be having nurse practitioners, registered nurses, LPNs, behavioral health counselors, and peer supporters are going to be part of the staffing that's going to be available for this diversion center. Basically, what we would like to be able to accomplish, and I think it's going to be something that will be very successful, is to take individuals to an area and to basically try to make a determination of what their issue and what their problem is. And that basically is what we call a stabilization area. Do they have a mental health issue? If so, let's get the mental health experts in to speak with them. Do they have a substance abuse issue? Do they have both? So there will be a medical assessments as well as behavioral health care assessments. Once that person has been stabilized, we will do a more in-depth assessment to see particularly what that individual's particular needs are. If they need medical withdrawal services, we will transfer them to the detox area. If they need mental health stabilization, we will transfer them to an area to work with a peer supporter as well as other behavioral health counselors to be able to calm them, to stabilize them, and to get some information from them. Normally, we anticipate that it's going to be less than a 24-hour stay at the intake area, and then they will be moved to another part of the building. And that building will be much more so in a individual rooms, individual spaces. We also plan on having at all times different activities going on. We're going to be focusing on suicide and homicide risk assessments. We're going to be focusing on trauma care and what kind of trauma did someone possibly experience. We're going to be working on the assessment and what behavioral health issue do they have, what level of care do they need. We're going to be working on family and what kind of support systems that people have. What other agencies have they been involved with that were already in the community if they have those? So all that information is going to be put together, and so that everybody will have an individual treatment plan on what's going to be the next steps for that person. We're going to have other kinds of activities to keep people, it's just not all going to be classes and groups, but we'll have some social type activities for our individuals to be able to keep them busy, to be able to have our peer supporters have more of a relaxed atmosphere to be able to talk with them. Our intent is that this be a welcoming center. This is not incarceration. Our intent is to have these individuals feel that this is a place that's there to help them and to help their families. Prior to anybody being discharged from the facility, they will have a plan in the community for a community provider to provide ongoing support. They will also hopefully have a plan in the community of their positive community support person, be it a family member or a neighbor or a friend that can help them and will know who their agencies are, where they need to call if they get future help. We also plan on having, other than NAMI coming in, which thank you to Scott because he's already arranged for NAMI to come in and do some booths with us, but to get other types of organizations that are going to be participating as this facility grows, to be able to make sure that this is very community oriented and this is very community based, and not just in Cleveland, but in the communities outside of Cleveland. So it's very important for us to know what the availability of services throughout the county, so that those individuals going back possibly to Solon or going back to a different area to know where they can reconnect to be able to get services that they need. Our plan right now is that no one will be released homeless, that we will be able to have some kind of place for someone to go, because that stabilization is important, that they have a place to live. So we're very excited about this project. As I said, we've run a drop-in and a detox center in Summit County for a number of years. It's been really beneficial for these individuals to know where they can go and where they can connect. I can tell you that working with law enforcement is also something that we're really excited about, because law enforcement sometimes feels like they spend a whole lot of time waiting for someone to help them, and hopefully we're going to be that help that they need so they can get back to their public safety duties. And I think at this point, I'm going to be turning this over to Mike Deaver to talk about the repairs and things that are in the building.
All right. Thank you, Ann. Mike?
Hi, thank you, Council President Brady, and I'm very happy to be with everyone here today. So the reason why I'm involved is in regards to the building itself and the facility. Over the last month, myself and some consultants have been meeting over at the facility along with the Oriana team and just reviewing the general program of how the space would work. We are very close to having a completed program and details of how the space will work, which includes some improvements that need to be done to the space. And that's what brings before you also this companion piece of legislation regarding the building modifications, both phase 1 and 2. There's many items within this building that we feel fall directly under the same type of improvements that we are doing to our county facilities, including lease facilities, in regards to the CARES Act in this crisis that's in front of us today regarding the COVID crisis. So our thoughts is to utilize those two contracts to assist us in doing some of those CARES replacement and repairs within the facility before the end of the year. Very conscious that we have a time frame in front of us right now that we have to get these repairs done. In addition, there are other repairs to the building that we intend to do, and there's a very quick timeline in front of us right now. And so that's what brings us forward with these two companion pieces of legislation. The scope of the work, I think, as we've talked about it in the Public Works Committee a number of times, is a lot of touchless surfaces, touchless fixtures in the building, HVAC modifications, some partitions, things of that nature that are going to be included. We do give updates in the Public Works Committee in regards to the projects as they move along, and my intent is to bring forward those same type of updates into the future in the Public Works Committee so that everyone's well aware of them. But at the same time, those projects, we are still defining the scope on all of them. Like I said, we've had the contractor and our architectural consultants walking through the space. We've got a pretty good idea of what we want to do. And I will be giving you updates to those improvements over the next few weeks here. So with that, I'll turn it back to Brandy and company to carry us forward here.
Thank you, Mike. Brandy or whomever.
Thank you, Council President. So I think at this time, we're able, or myself or any of us are able to entertain any questions that council might have.
Okay, well, this is a quite big and complex project. However, we have been working on it for 3 to 4 years, so it's not unfamiliar. It's glad to see it come to this point. Now, with members of the council, because we're on Zoom, be patient with me about recognizing you. I will try my best for you to get my attention, and if you'll be patient, we'll have plenty of time for whatever questions need to be asked. So at this time, I'm going to open up questions to the presenters from the council, and who would like to go first?
Mr. President.
Councilman Miller.
Thank you very much. I know there's going to be a lot of questions, so I just have one question and a quick comment. And the question is to Director Dever. If we pass this legislation on the 8th, there's only going to be a little over 3 weeks left before the end of the year. Can you kind of give us a feel for what kinds of repairs could be completed in that short time frame for CARES Act eligibility, and what portion of the total work to be done do you think that CARES Act related work would comprise?
Yeah, so thank you, Councilman. Yeah, so very quickly, so we, as I had said, we brought our architect in there and we brought a few of the contractors through, and we've identified some of the skill sets that they have. And so we've identified specifically some contractors that are going to take on some of the CARES related repairs. Specifically bathroom fixtures, as you see maybe in the county ad building today, for those of you who are in it, there's a lot of automation going on in the bathrooms there. Our intent is to do that. In the shower area, there is some automation that needs to take place in those areas. The HVAC system, similar to what we're doing in every one of the county buildings right now, there's improvements that we've identified, and we've identified the materials that we need to be able to purchase before the end of the year. And we believe that we can get it accomplished. The overall value of those repairs under the CARES Act between now and the end of the calendar year is in the range of about $450,000. And we'll continue to update you as we move along there.
Thank you very much. And the Diversion Center is a long time coming, and I strongly support it. We can no longer have our jails be the main place where people receive mental health treatment. This is also part of a larger effort to improve racial equity in our judicial system by reducing the jail population. It is important to recognize that this is only the first step. Having a pre-booking diversion center is an essential component, but we must have effective mental health diversion at all stages of the judicial process. We also have to give careful consideration to admission processes, follow-up treatment, and the location of the permanent diversion center. I look forward to continuing to develop these vitally important services. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Who's up next?
Conwell.
Councilwoman Conwell.
Thank you. Through the chair to EV Brandy or Director Dever. Director Dever stated that the COVID funds or the CARES funds would be $450,000. How much will it cost for the build out of the East 55th building in total?
In total, I'm estimating up to $1.5 million. Okay, and that's where there is $1 million within the diversion project for capital repairs. So we are scoping those out, and then our intent is to utilize those building modification contractors. We'll do these mini competitive bids with those repairs. But the CARES dollars specifically, we believe there's about $450,000 worth of CARES repairs. And then the remainder to get us to roughly 1.5 million will be other repairs that we'll be doing, and those will be with the opioid dollars that were mentioned earlier. At the same time, furniture and fixtures is a key piece to this too that we need to remember is that our hope is that we take, the fact is we're going to be taking the furniture that we bring into the facility. So the procurement of the furniture is probably going to be our heaviest lift right now, is trying to get that in a decent amount of time.
And a follow-up to that is how much is planned to be set aside for the new location?
Well, we're not there yet. Maybe I'll let Chief Mason speak on that, but that site hasn't been identified as of yet. So I guess that's a future discussion.
Okay, and so the furniture cost, Director Dever, that you mentioned, is that included in the 1.5?
Yes, Councilwoman.
Okay. Thank you, Brandy.
Councilwoman.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman first. Are you?
I think Brandy wanted to say something on that last.
I think so too. You both spoke at the same time. Brandy?
Yes, Councilman. Thank you, Councilwoman. I was just going to restate Bill's earlier comment that the diversion project, our intent at this time is to use approximately $60 million of the opioid fund. That includes the possibility for 20 to 25 million for a build out of a new site, as well as operational costs for up to 4 or 5 years for a diversion center, which would include the $10 million that is in front of you with the contract today.
Okay, so this takes us out 4 or 5 years, correct?
That's correct. This contract is for 2 years. And again, we did that because there's a possibility if we move to a new site and build it out, that would be the time frame or the approximate time frame.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilman
To
Conwell.
follow up on that.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just follow up on that through the chair to Brandy or Mr. Devers or Bill Mason. So I know we've been in situations like this with the jail kitchen and things of that nature. If you're putting in this much money into the East 55th, why was it determined that we would need a new facility down the road?
I can speak to one important component of it. We really worked hard to get something up and running very quickly. And so this was really important. And so really the opportunities for expansion and growth, and there's other opportunities that may or may not work. We have some limitations where we're at with this site. It's very functional for what we're trying to do now, but all of us envision this as a longer project that's going to continue to expand. I can tell you the other centers that we've been in communication with, they've started with a small amount of beds, maybe one type of service, but they've all really grown into almost mini campuses since their start and have been very successful in helping treat mental health and addiction individuals or addicted individuals in needs, homeless needs, some other needs. So this site and its availability immediately was really helpful to have and get up and running. We would have to spend, up to 1.5 as Director Dever stated, but some of that again would be equipment that we'd purchase that we would take with us to the new building. But really, it was balancing that immediate need to get it open, which I think we all agreed was really a priority for all of us.
Okay.
If I
Thank
can
you,
join in, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
And I just to expand a little bit on what Brandy has said, and the thought here is to make this center a beacon for this community for the next 25 to 50 years, not just on a short-term basis. We could have held off and waited to find the permanent location to rehab it, repurpose it, but we'd be talking about a year from now to a year and a half from now, and we didn't want to do that. We have been waited long enough. We think we know enough about this, so we wanted to get it going and get it rocking.
So this is a work in progress, a big project, but I'm also pleased that you're moving forward with getting it started and getting some real traction here. And we hope this to be open in April. Is that what I heard?
April 1st of next year.
Sounds good. All right. Other questions by the council?
Nan Baker, Chair.
Councilman Baker.
Thank you. It is exciting. Looking forward to all the partners involved. That's exciting in itself. I do have a question. I've raised it before, and maybe you could walk me through the thought process. The last count in November, I just looked up, our jail population was 1384. So that would be, if we have 50 beds, about a 3 to 4% of that jail population. What is the thought process of choosing 50 beds for this facility? And when we build the new facility, are we considering a greater number in beds? I mean, it was 50, all we could do right now, given the resources and the facility, or was that a number that we will continue in the new facility that hopefully will be built? But based on the population, it just seems like a small percentage of people that we are caring for. And if I may just add, I remember when we first talked about the diversion center, we said that a large part of the jail population was due to mental illness and drug addiction. So I'm just a little concerned about the number that we've settled on for 50 beds, or 300 to 400, I believe, was said earlier, annually serving people. Can you kind of walk me through how you determine those numbers?
Yeah, if I can, I'll start, and Brandy, you can jump in where need be. But the thought is the 50 beds initially is you'll be using these people who will be coming in for like anywhere between 3 and 9 days. Then they'll be given aftercare, so they'll get treatment at another facility off campus in one of the other providers in our community. So it will be approximately 300 to 400 individuals that we'll be keeping out of the jails. That's a significant number. I mean, in my view, it's very significant. We will learn a lot through this process we're going through right now with the Oriana House, and we'll get a lot smarter about it and be a lot more efficient. And when we go to our next location, we'll make decisions based on what we know. And if it requires, and those things are, we need to expand and have 100 beds instead of 50, we'll be able to do that.
I would just also add, and that remember the amount of individuals in our jail system that might have a mental health or addiction need doesn't convert directly to someone that could go into diversion. If someone has a serious criminal history or a violent crime that they committed, there's a lot of factors in who might be an appropriate candidate or who would be for diversion. So it's not by any means everyone would be able to, but there is a population that would definitely benefit from this, but it would not be everybody that is in our jail with mental health or addiction needs. And as Bill said, there's opportunities for expansion. We get it right and we learn from ourselves and what's our processes at this current site that we can get up and running quickly, and a larger site with more room and expansion opportunities, down the near road. There might be other opportunities to speak to, I think, Council and Miller's point about diversion and different diversion processes all throughout the criminal justice system. The goal right now is pre-arrest. So one dedicated area that we're focusing on, pre-arrest, 50 beds for those individuals. But again, that's another opportunity in the future for potential expansion where different points in the criminal justice process, we might then divert individuals, but this is our starting place.
Thank you for that. If I may, as a follow-up, so the answer back then is that the 50 beds based on a population of maybe 13, 14, we've been as high as 2,000 in the jails, but trying to keep it around 1,000 to 1,300, I think is the number. You've chosen that number of 50 because that's the number that you feel is the best in servicing those that are needed, and not because we don't have a facility large enough, or they are higher risk people, or that 50 that we will be serving, or the 300 to 400 annually. That is the number that you have come up with. That is what we need to serve and are vulnerable in the jail population. Is that your assessment, or would you have gone 100 if you would have had a larger facility to service?
Oh, actually, the RFP requested the 50 beds. Initially, we went at 150 beds, but then as we spoke with our consultants and figured this out a little bit better, we modified it.
Can you tell me, Mr. Mason, how many will not be served because they are high risk because of the crimes that they have? I mean, they too, I imagine, are victims. Unfortunately, we find them later. They might have been able to be saved earlier if we've had the service for them. But what population do you think are jailed that really we'd rather not see jailed, or unfortunately are jailed, but we have no place for them for help?
That's a very hard number to come to, but I could tell you, like today, because we've been really working hard to shrink that population, that we probably don't have a lot of people in the jail today that are low level, minor type of felony crime. The ones that are in there, by and far, they've done something pretty bad, and it's not likely they would be diverted out. You're correct. I think the number is about 1,350 today. I would venture to say that 85% of those would never be considered.
I would just add, Councilman Baker, that when we started this process, the consultants, Pulitzer, Bogart and Associates, did an assessment of the data provided from our jail. Unfortunately, it was limited data, but they were able to take a 6-month period at that time and look at that data. Now, that was when we had an ADP. There was over 2,000, I think they used, so many more prisoners within the jail. At that time, when they just did an assessment with the information they had, and again, it wasn't all the data they needed, there was approximately up to, I think, 130 to 150 who may or may not might be able to be diverted. Even that number is not going to be everybody by any means. You know, the officers aren't going to take into account every single person that could. And so I think 50, to your initial question, was still a fair number given the data that we had in the starting point for this.
Okay, good. I appreciate that, so I can relay that information to others that are asking that same question. So thank you for the information.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Other questions by the council?
Council
President.
First, Councilwoman Brown, and then I heard Purnell, so I'll go to Mr. Jones next.
Thank you, Council President. So I have quite a few questions, starting with Chief Carney. You had mentioned a county in Texas. Could you state that county's name again that you said has an operation?
Sure, it's Bexar County. It's actually spelled B-E-X-A-R, but pronounced Bexar County in Texas. It's in San Antonio, Texas. Very successful program. I think they're close to 20 years in operation. Another program that is successful with diversion, but diverting also from the central booking process, is Harris County, which is Houston, Texas. We've had conversations and we've had some virtual tours with them. Again, their program focuses more on the central booking process, which obviously Bill and Bob are working on right now in the jail, but they're another very successful program in Texas.
Okay, and then you had also talked about just the involvement from some of the different facilities. We did receive a letter from St. Vincent Charities. Do they have any involvement in this diversion center project?
So Councilwoman, were part of a large group that responded to the first RFP that I referenced earlier. Unfortunately, they at that time had offered to provide a significant, if not all of the beds, and came back to the county and said that they just weren't able to provide what they had initially offered to us. And they did not respond to the second RFP. So we were actually in the process and speaking with them about this diversion program. And they actually were the ones that said we aren't able to move forward at this time.
Okay.
If I could jump in there, please.
Who is that?
This is Bill Mason.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, in addition to that, though, they provide a lot of mental health services for our community now. And so when the initial individuals come into the crisis center and they're analyzed and stabilized, a lot of them will be going out to some of St. Vincent's beds, and we'll be using them as follow-up care.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Bill. If I could just add, Bill's right. You know, they do an amazing job and have such a niche here in Cuyahoga County. And for example, we talked to probate court and working with them on individuals and diverting individuals, and probate court has a unique process for individuals. And so St. Vincent is a locked or a more secure facility. So we would likely work with them, or we hope to work with them on something like that. So St. Vincent will still be part of this process. They just weren't part of this contract or the second RFP response.
Okay, and that kind of leads me to a follow-up, because I think that Bill also mentioned there would be an advisory board made up of hospitals. I'm not sure if they would be included in that, and what the citizen participation, if any, would be. Has there been any details around this advisory or community advisory board, Bill?
Only the concept that we think that it should be have this community oversight, which would be hospitals and community members. Yes, that they would be part of, as a board, and having the diversion center report to them on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, and kind of just keep in touch what they're doing and helping them make their decisions, big picture.
Okay, so no final details. So hopefully we can be involved a little bit in that conversation as far as the structure of the community advisory board, because I have gotten interest from constituents around participating. So I'd like to be helpful in that area if we could.
We'll make sure of that.
Thank you very much. And then the CIT training, we did cover some of the questions that I had. I think Sue answered most of them. But I guess the big question is, how many officers do we have in the county?
Councilwoman Scott Osicki here. I can answer that for you. There are a total of 4,237 officers in Cuyahoga County, and that's including 1,636 officers that are employed with the city of Cleveland. So that leaves about 206 officers in the suburbs and other law enforcement like CMHA and RTA and things like that. About 600 officers so far have been trained in CIT. And so that would leave about 2,001 officers that we would need to have trained firsthand for the CIT training. And just also there's about 300 dispatchers that need to be trained as well.
Okay, so with the CIT training, I also think I heard officers would have a call-in line. Is that in conjunction with this training, or is that separate and apart?
No, the call-in line will be part of the training so that they would know, what exactly it is, when to call, how to utilize them. So there'll be written electronic materials as well as actual training on that.
And I think I heard Sue say that there was voice over IP. So are we providing special devices to all of the officers throughout the county to be able to implement this, utilize this call-in service that is going to take place? Or
Councilwoman, if I may respond to that question, we have been in conversation about the possibility of doing that. We know that we have the opportunity to use this voiceover. And what it comes down to is really the mechanics involved in getting the app on the officers' phones, what is entailed in doing that, and then just kind of doing a test run on it. So we've already started those. We've already had those conversations. We'll continue to move forward on that. We're really excited about the possibility of interacting with someone in the field in kind of that face-to-face way.
That is encouraging. One of the concerns that arose when you started speaking about that, though, I'm guessing that the officers will be provided the devices. They won't be forced to use their own personal devices to try to exercise this method, especially when you're talking about possibly turning the citizen over to the caretakers or the dispatchers, if you will.
I think those are the details that the city would have to work out. I'm not privy to that, how that would actually play out, only that that there is movement around trying to make it happen.
Okay.
I would just add, Councilwoman Brown, that, you know, officers also have radios, so that's their communication device. And some of the new upgraded 800 megahertz radios have opportunities for apps or VoIP or opportunities to use a smartphone. And so again, those are conversations we have with them, but providing an extra device might not be something that works when they already have their phones as well as the radio that they carry, but trying to figure out the best method to enable that, you know, technology or communication for them.
Thank you, Brandy, Chief Carney. And then and finally, Ann, I think there was a question that I had for you, and you talked about other agencies interacting. Bill also talked about transitioning some of the individuals into other facilities. Could you identify some of those other agencies, and will they have a platform kind of like we use as My Chart, so that they can have some connectivity as far as the individuals that have been through the system, so that everybody has a universal understanding of individuals that have been maybe processed already, if you will?
I'm not sure if Brandy wants to jump in on this one, because I know that's the second part of one of her RFPs. But many of the clients that we anticipated getting in, particularly those that have mental health issues, are probably already connected with an agency within the community already. So what we want to do is to be able to re-engage them if the client wants to be re-engaged with that agency, and re-engage them with the information. Now, many of the electronic health records have portals, so that that information can be placed so that an agency could then access the portals. We are working right now with our electronic health records to make sure that we can establish those portals and make them available to providers. So the provider would be able to get in and to get that information once that client has signed that release of information. So that's in the process of looking, and as I say, most electronic health records do have those portals that are available for other providers. As far as what individual agencies, Randy, I'm going to turn that over to you, because I think that might be part of one of your follow-up projects.
Sure. Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. So I currently have an RFP I completed that's finished right now. It will be released soon. We are waiting for this contract so ADAMHS can, and ADAMHS is putting in some input. But the RFP asks for providers. So rather than just using, for example, current providers that Oriana might use currently, we want to make sure to expand opportunities to other providers throughout the county, or as you said, providers that an individual might already have a background and a relationship with. So we will be releasing that RFP. It asks providers if they're interested in, providing a bed or beds for this diversion center. There's a couple different options that they can choose from depending on what works best for them. And the RFP also includes an opportunity for them, if they need to ask for some one-time startup cost for certain things. But the intent, again, is to identify additional providers or providers for the diversion center, different providers throughout the county.
Okay, so we haven't made a final decision on the agencies that will be utilized.
That's correct. That RFP has not been released yet. That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Carney. Thank you, Council President Brady. That concludes my questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Council President. Many of my questions were answered right there, but I I will ask this. Share with me the difference or the similarities between the diversion center and the behavioral health center through Metro Health. I know we use the diversion center obviously for where our police will be able to divert those with mental health challenges right away, but are there any similarities or contrast between the two facilities?
Brandy, is that something you feel comfortable trying?
Unfortunately, I don't have the background all behind the the Metro Health Project. I would say that there's absolutely a need for mental health or behavioral health beds within the community. There's a fair number of beds for addiction needs or some residential addiction needs beds, but when it comes to mental health, it's extremely limited in Cuyahoga County for some residential or beds. So I would add that, but I don't know enough about the Metro Health Center to speak to that.
Gotcha. Let me ask the question another way. Let's speak in terms of, can you hear me?
Yes.
Maybe I can answer it a different way. I want to get a sense of the bed capacity in the community, the connectivity. We've had conversations, I've had conversations with Bill in the recent years, just about the existing beds already. Along with what we have, will there be a counting up of all the beds that already exist in the community, and will they be used too as overflow when needed?
Councilman Jones, if I could, this is Brandy. The RFP, the second RFP that I just mentioned to Councilwoman Brown that we will be releasing, the reason for that RFP is for any provider that's currently in the community to respond with their interest in, being part of this project and having a bed for this project. And so we will evaluate the responses, and there's different options that they can pick, whether they're going to they want to always have beds saved for us to use or only at certain times. But we will open that up countywide so that we can make sure, again, we can get a whole host of different providers. We need a handful that we'll be able to choose from, or more than a handful for the diversion center for that reason.
And Councilman Jones, the diversion center is a short stay. And many of the clients that will be going through the diversion center are going to need a lot more ongoing services than would be available at the diversion center. So the diversion center will have to release them to these other providers, and many of them possibly will need some residential treatment beds as well.
I appreciate that. So these are not actually, I appreciate that. These are not actually residential beds. Yeah, I heard Brandy say these are acute and for those who have, I guess, detox, need 3 to 7 days, 9 days. I think I heard her say initial treatment, and then be transitioned to another bed, possibly somewhere else out of the diversion center.
Yes,
that's correct. These beds are for, I'm sorry, Ann, these beds are for the initial 5 to 7 days for detoxification, acute care, up to 9 days for stabilization for mental health. And then again, and I'll let Ann speak to this, they would be transitioned, or the staff within the diversion center would coordinate them going to one of those other centers. When we first started this project, our intent was to, on site at the diversion center, also have beds that were up to 120 days for that very reason. And what we realized is, for example, with the addiction population, a lot of those beds are already out there. So instead, the 5 to 7 days on-site acute need, and then we would send them to these current beds that are available. And if you want to add, since this is your area.
And that's exactly what Brandy was saying. The goal is that when someone is released from that facility, depending on what their level of care is, if they need further residential placement, that referral be made to a residential placement provider that would be responding to the RFP that the county has yet to put out. If they don't need residential care, then the referral would be made to a provider that's already in the community that would best meet the needs of that individual client.
Gotcha. Has there been an assessment of all the need in the community for, again, that immediate detox need and bids for, again, as you mentioned, residential or or halfway house, all those things down the continuum line. Has there been any type of reports or assessment identifying what is actually needed in terms of number within our community?
Councilman Jones, I'll defer to whoever may want to answer your question, but I do wanted to add that, you know, some of what you're getting at, these have been very informative responses, but some of what you're getting at will be discussed on the other, you know, part of the discussion of the other item, just so you're aware of that. It will be a discussion about that very issue that you're trying to get at.
Okay. Thank you, Council President.
I was going to jump in, if I could, President Brady. I was going to basically say hi. First of all, thank you all. And, you know, Chief Carney, you may want to talk about the effort you made for a good period of time assessing all the beds in the community, calling around and contacting. There's a huge need out there, Councilman Jones. I think you're well aware of that. And so when we spoke to Dr. Boutros at Metro about the hospital that they're creating, and I think if he's available or whoever's talking about the hospital when that comes up, will tell you that they're putting together 110 beds, but there's a need for even greater than that amount. You know, our community, you know, is underserved. Combining the diversion center and Metro's new effort will go well together. The people who are coming out of the diversion center will need places to go, and there's all kinds of need. During the course of the work that we've done on this diversion center, which, as President Brady said, has been going on for several years, we've had lengthy conversations with the drug court judges. You know, they look at places to put people in the community when they're ready to leave the jail. And lots of those folks that are able to leave have no place to go. And the judges will tell you that. So all of the things that are now happening, which are extremely exciting and which we've discussed for quite a long time, will truly improve this community and help people who need it with mental health and addiction problems.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. I thank you. And I certainly support this project. This diversion center is needed, greatly needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Other questions by the council?
Sunny Simon. Mr. President, Councilwoman Simon, thank you. So are the cities, I don't know to whom this will be addressed, but the cities right now contract, some of them, with the county to transport their misdemeanor pickups to the county or other defendants. But what happens with diversion? Will the cities contract with the county to be able to use the facility, and will there be a cost?
I don't know if Bill's wants to add, this is Brandy, but I would add, this is a countywide option. So officers countywide will receive the CIT training, be able to use the hotline. And if they have an individual who meets the criteria for diversion center, we'll send the diversion center, we'll send them to the diversion center, and we will not charge back the police departments for that.
Okay. And then secondly, thank you, Brandy. And so it's always been perplexing to me that, you know, these people that are picked up are they're not forced to stay at the diversion center. They can get up and leave anytime. You know, so statistically, I understand that it's worth it though. Does anybody have the stats from the Texas that actually the people that are picked up for being drunk or intoxication can just simply leave, but do many of them stay to get the treatment?
I do have some of those stats, and I would add that, you know, this is a voluntary program. Individuals, if they don't want to go to the diversion center, they go to jail and they have a criminal history then, and, you know, there's a process there. So this is a really amazing option for them to take. It is a staff secure facility, as you said. It is not a locked facility like a jail. Otherwise we would send them to jail. So I think maybe Oriana might want to speak to this or could add some value to the discussion because they do operate another center like this. but there is the ability for individuals to walk out of the center, but we've still seen very good success rates in other programs. Also, Frontline might want to speak to this because of the center you operate on the near west side for mental health. So either of you?
Yeah, I would just like to comment, and our experience with the drop-in center mostly has been for the substance abuse clients. And what we have found is that clients are more willing, and again, there's a little bit of a different model where it's community access as well as law enforcement access, which I think is something that you're looking at in the future to expand to. But clients would prefer to come directly to the drop-in center, so they're not picked up by law enforcement. And what we tend to have is that what we refer to as the frequent flyers, the people who utilize an awful lot of services through the emergency room, through law enforcement, through criminal justice. You kind of take them out of those high expensive areas and place them in a diversion center where they will continue to get services. You'll try to continue to hook them up, but they use a lot of money when they do go to the ER instead of a diversion center, or they go to jail instead of the diversion center. So there is a cost benefit. I don't have any specific information on that for you, Councilwoman. But again, for 20 years, we've seen that a lot of the referred to as the people that utilize a lot of the resources in the community tend to utilize some of those more expensive services much less frequently. And Sue, I don't know if you can add to that also.
So this is Rick Oliver, the Director of Crisis Services. I can respond just briefly about our experience at the Crisis Stabilization Unit, providing services to the mental health consumers. And I think that when provided with an opportunity for treatment, many individuals do accept that. Access to treatment is an issue, and this diversion center is going to offer that access to treatment that people find difficult right now to find in our county. And I think that those who don't agree to participate in treatment, there will be some consequences that they'll have to face. And I think that most people will understand that and will stay at the diversion center and get the treatment they need.
Just I think just the optics of it, someone's in a diversion center, and as Ann said before, this is not a jail, this is not law enforcement standing within the center and at the doors with locked doors. So that sense of hopefully more community is hopefully something that they'll be receptive to and want to stay and know that this is a long-term, goal of bettering themselves and success for them. But a locked facility would be a completely different model for than what we're currently doing.
One of the things that the diversion center has to provide is hope. That hope that there is recovery, either from a substance abuse or mental health service or someone who has both. But that's basically what these centers offer, is that hope that you can recover, hope that you can have better skills so that you can have a better life. And that's just so very important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Simon. Other questions by the council?
This is Councilwoman Brown. I just have one quick question, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the event that we reach capacity at the diversion center, what happens then?
This is Brandy. I would add, 50 is, as we mentioned and discussed before, it's kind of starting and looking at the numbers. There's constantly going to be people coming in and out. As we've said, this is a short-term 5 to 7 days. And so, there's flexibility and availability there. We have even talked with Oriana and ADAMHS already about possibly adding a few extra beds in case there is some overflow. But I think in a starting point, we can monitor, and we're not going to get up to 50 in a week or two, but we can monitor and see our success and see how things are going and adapt if necessary. But there's some flexibility just by the model that people would be coming in and out fairly regularly from the beds, and so they would become available.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Chair, if I may just add a wrap-up question.
Sure.
At the point of arrest for the low offense that this person has done, and the phone calls made, and it's determined that they are a candidate for the diversion center. If we did not have a diversion center, how long would they be in jail on a low offense?
I'll try it. That it's a hard number, but it just depends on the offense. But more likely than not, if it's mental health, they're always there longer for whatever that reason may be before they're either bonded out or get a pretrial and get out. I don't know that. I think I saw a number it's 22 days, something like that for mental health, and something less for substance abusers.
All right, so I guess a follow-up to that then is if we are anticipating that their stay would be 7 to 9 days, and that's voluntary, they could leave after the second or third day, is that what I'm hearing?
They could.
Why is it that we can't make that a non-voluntary? Because they would have jail time that would be longer on the average than that. And then if I may follow, from there, you're referring them somewhere else for continued care, and that too is voluntary. Why is it that we can't put more teeth into once that decision's been made and that person agrees, yes, I'm going to the diversion center for treatment? What is it that stops us from making sure that we can keep them longer as they would be in jail?
Well, I would just say as an overall, I mean, people who are in need of treatment, they really have to want it. If they don't want it, we're not going to be able to help them no matter. But on the front end, when there's a crime is committed by one of these individuals, law enforcement will be involved, and police make snap decisions on the street all the time, whether that's an appropriate setting for diversion or not. If it's a little bit more questionable, the crime that they committed, they'll be contacting a prosecutor, whether the city or the county, and they both have indicated that they will give these individuals this pass, if you will, if they go into treatment. Now, again, if they walk out on it, there's not a lot you can do for that individual, but they're having great success in Texas. And I keep telling everybody says the great state of Texas. Well, I think we're smarter and we're better here, and we'll see that we can duplicate what they do, and if not, do better.
All right, thank you. It'd be interesting 6 months from now to get a follow-up as to how successful we are.
I agree.
Thank you.
Mr. President, can I add one more thing?
Yes, Councilwoman.
I just wanted to add as well that some of the municipalities right now are not even able to pick up or picking up people who would be eligible to go to the diversion center right now, just because of what's happening to keep the jail population down. And, they're just left basically at a hospital doorstep if they're lucky, but this will give another option well needed to law enforcement. So I think it's counterintuitive at first, but the more you look at what's happening on the ground, it makes a lot of sense. So I really support this, and getting to know more about it as the months go by thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any further questions by the council?
Yes, Councilman Brady.
Yes, Councilman Conwell.
Okay, through the chair to Sue Nemeth. Funding for the mobile crisis unit has been limited to low in the past. What do you think the cost that is needed for participation from Frontline for the diversion center? So are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. Although I'm wondering, Rick, is this something that you want to take in terms of cost, or I can certainly speak to the budget that was submitted, Councilwoman, for our services for the first year. It's around 286,000. Is that what your question was?
Yeah, more so, because I know in the past in the conversations that we've had, you've been kind of underfunded or not enough funding for mobile crisis.
Yes. We did submit a budget. That budget went through with few questions, and it was a budget that allowed us to compensate the individuals in an appropriate manner who would be working on the call center line.
Okay, so 286,000 annually?
Yes, that's 286 for the first year, which is a little higher than the second year because there'll be the purchasing of laptops and some other equipment. But the second year is 270,000.
And Councilwoman Conwell, that is included in this $9 million contract that's in front of you. ADAMHS is subcontracting with both Frontline as well as Oriana. And so those costs are included in the $9 million for 2 years.
Okay, I have another question through the chair to Ann. Many of these individuals, you spoke about Summit County, many of these individuals have previous criminal histories. Has there been any changes with assisting them to clear their records in Summit County?
One of the recommendations that we make, and when someone is released, they get a packet. And one of the things included in the packet are there are clinics that are run here in Summit County by the law school. That would be something that we would investigate to give them that information on these are the legal clinics that will help you with expungements or help you with those types of things. There's also something that we've talked with the legal defender's office because in many instances, some people have some civil types of things that need to be cleared up. And they're running clinics for that also. So that kind of legal information would be included into the packet that's given to the client upon release.
Okay, and thank you. And so Bill or Carney, Chief Carney, are we planning, I know you talk about these phases are gonna expand out. Are we looking at doing something like this similar?
That's something we have talked about, but it certainly makes sense.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councilwoman
Thank you.
Conwell. Any further questions by the council?
Council President.
Councilman Jones.
Yeah. Councilman Brown asked that question a little better than I did. Capacity. I really just want to know is if we were to reach a maximum, if we would use all of the bids, were we aware of any other bids in the community that we could connect to for if
Councilman Purnell, I can try to take a touch of that. You know, like in our county jail now, we have a capacity of like 1,850, and on a regular basis, going back to last year, there was always 2,200. Not that that's an ideal situation, and you don't want to get there, but I talked to Jim Lawrence a little bit about, he's from Oriana, about having extra beds just in case that you kind of pull them out if it ever gets to that place. I think what you're asking is maybe we can find somewhere else to spill over if we have to. I mean, we can look at those options, but I think what we really need to do is let's get this place open. Let's feel it. Let's see it. Let's find out what's happening and adjust to it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions?
Councilman Brady, this is Brandy Carney. I would just like to ask when it is time that because of Director Devers' comments regarding the building and getting in the building immediately, that we would request, or I would request that this would be a second reading suspension and request that if approved, this go back to the full council for a vote on Tuesday again, so we could get up and running as soon as possible.
Thank you, Brandy. That is our intention because of the time frame and the COVID money, and as you say, what Mike Dever previously discussed. Further questions by the committee? Hearing none. These are
one last question for Mike Dever.
Okay, go ahead, Councilman Jones.
Just as I look at the contract, $30 million, and looking back at the history of and how we made Mike.
I'm sorry, Mike, can you hear Councilman Jones? He was coming in and out for me.
Unfortunately, no, I didn't hear all of that. I only got an odd word. So,
you want to take a shot at that for now?
Okay. I know I get a lot of static feedback. I hear every other word, so hopefully I'm not as bad as what I'm hearing. But my question, $30 million between these two contracts, 15 million and 15 million. As I look at the vendors, I see a parallel between a previous contract, our previous $30 million. can you speak to how the county, how you're moving forward in the future? Is this something we can see in the future? Have you made systemic changes to how you put out RFPs in this type of arena? And can we expect to see something similar things in the future?
Yeah, I'll take that. So the intent with this whole building modification contract was all circled around the need for speed to spend the COVID dollars. So that was the whole reason for it. And that's what we intend to do just to get through this project. After that, our intent is not to continue with this building modification within the future. We will go back to utilizing the procurement tools that are available to the county. We'll be continuing to explore other options that may be available out there, but I'll be sure to bring it before council before we try and jump into another type of scenario like this. It's unprecedented, and I don't expect it to go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. All right, well, there are 3 resolutions and we need to vote on all 3 of them. The Law Department has some tactical amendments, but given that I only heard about it about 15 minutes ago, I'm going to hold those off for next Tuesday's regular meeting rather than confuse this issue with insignificant amendments. I'd like to move 2020-0265 to the full council for second reading adoption. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll just have to pick one of those out of a hat. You can do it. We'll give it to Conwell because she's on the screen right now. So Conwell is seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. This resolution is adopted. I now move 2020-0266 to the full council for second reading adoption. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll give that to Miller. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. And now 2020-0267, I'll move to the full council for second reading adoption. Do I have a second?
Second.
Brown.
We'll give this one to Brown.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Thank you very much. Very big deal. Very big deal. Now we've got about 2 hours. Yes, well, about an hour and a half of discussion. We have one major item in front of us. Dr. Boutros, the CEO of Metro, is on the Zoom. We don't have to go out or go in. He'll be here in a minute. But what I'd like to do is take a 5-minute break, clear our palate for the next discussion. So hold tight or take your 5 minutes, and we'll see you back here in a couple of minutes.
Hey, Dr. Boutros, this is Ashley Johnson.
Hi, Ashley. How are you?
Hi, I just stopped your screen share because I'm trying to fix something, so sorry about that.
No worries. So it worked. That's all I needed to know.
Good afternoon, Dr. Boutros.
Good afternoon.
Very good.
How are you?
Okay, we were having a little problem getting back on here, but I'm back, so we'll wait for the others.
Hey, Dan, a couple other council members were having the same problem, so we might just have to give it an extra minute or so before we get everyone back on.
Okay.
Ashley, were you able to see the screen when I did it?
Yes, Dr. Boutros.
All right, so whenever you let me know, I'll be happy to do that.
Ashley, can you see if Sunny's in the waiting room, please?
She should be in now.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Trevor, I'm not sure what's wrong with my phone, but I get static. There were times when I was only hearing every other word, and I don't know if I was projecting the same way.
You were, Purnell. Yeah, it was. We were hearing maybe every third word.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know how to fix that. It makes it difficult when you can't hear.
Yeah. We'll talk about
Okay.
that, Purnell, after. Might be your connection. We'll see.
Okay. All right.
Councilman Jones, I'll try to read lips.
Okay.
Are we good?
Dan, I'm just seeing if what council members were waiting on.
Cornell, it could be the digital divide. I don't know if it's the Wi-Fi in outer space is as good as it is.
You're right. Digital divide.
I couldn't
But
resist. I couldn't resist.
but you know, Nan has the same problem, so I don't know what to say. You know.
Dan, we have everybody here, and Dr. Boutros is ready to go. So whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Our second item today involves a project that Metro has put forward, a behavioral health center, and we have Dr. Boutros here to lead the discussion on this. Dr. Boutros, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to the council members for giving me the time. I want to take a second to, I've been on a council meeting viewing it, and I just want to give a second to tell you that the Diversion Center has our full support, and I applaud the council for moving it forward. I think it will be incredibly helpful to the community. As you've heard from Brandy, there is a significant need for all sorts of services in the community, and County Executive Duties spoke about the same thing. So if it's okay with you, I will share my screen, and we can start from there. Are you okay seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay. So let me start with many of the council members may recollect on February 26, 2020, we made a presentation to the county council members about this conceptual framework that regarding behavioral health and addiction framework for the county to consider both the community aspect of it and the criminal justice system. You'll see this in yellow because of the slides that I extracted out from the presentation to the county will be in yellow for you. So it was wonderful. We had a large convening group, had 50 plus partners in the process, including the ADAMHS board, St. Vincent's, MHAC, United Way, Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, Greater Cleveland Congregation, Frontline Services, really all the experts who are interested in this. And we did our work looking at the state and national best practices in behavioral health and addiction, and looked at all the folks who put out recommendations. So if you see in the right-hand corner this yellow box, it indicates that is a part of the presentation that was given to you. And there's a very large compendium, a white paper that was also given to the county executive and county council. The specific part I want to talk about, and we pulled that from the presentation, is this high-value behavioral health and addiction services. And that it became clear that short-term stabilization and short-term treatment was necessary, and that long treatment and recovery was also necessary. This model wanted to identify how we're going to treat folks with severe mental illness and substance abuse disorder or substance use disorder. And I would say is that many folks during the discussion at during the Diversion Center kind of lumped all substance abuse disorder in the same vein. There is they have very different requirements for care. Folks who are intoxicated with alcohol versus those who are chemically dependent on alcohol versus those who are chemically dependent on opioids, fentanyl, a mixture of drugs, have very different treatment requirements. The current system, as we said, contains disincentives, and both Councilman Jones and Councilwoman Conwell spoke about this integration and how do we work together. And there's a need for holistic and comprehensive treatment. And we wanted to align the entire process around SAMHSA's vision of a transformative model. SAMHSA is the federal agency that looks at mental health and substance abuse. And through the analysis, we found out that there's 120 to 250 inpatient behavioral health beds gap in Cuyahoga County. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the recommendation of the entire group, and we spent a couple of hours with you on it, is the emergency departments need to scale and standardize the approach for crisis response, that there needs to be expanded capacity for hospital inpatient units and expanded capacity for both acute and long-term treatment for psychiatric units, that we need to, there are plenty of outpatient facilities, but we needed to connect the inpatient facilities to these areas, and that correctional health needed to play a role in that connection. So if people are not in the diversion center and they're in prison, that they need to have a significant connection and treatment in the jail. The recommendations with the stars were the priority we talked to you about. We talked about capital investment to developing mobile services, an increase in psychiatric ED bed capacity, which Metro Health will talk about, an increase in inpatient beds for adults, children, and dual diagnosis patient, and substance use detox capacity, and also to build capacity for partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient programs, which are the long-term programs for patients who leave an inpatient psychiatric facility. So our proposal, we looked at the need to meet the needs of our most vulnerable neighbors, and in 2019, Cuyahoga County and all the hospitals, health systems, all major agencies came together and did a single community needs assessment. The first time it was ever done, that was extraordinary. And one of the 5 top priorities was enhancing mental health and reducing substance abuse in the county. We looked at the national trends, as we said to you, and we've done lots of analyses. There are 200 plus behavioral health and addiction beds that are needed. And as you know, before COVID, 1 in 4 Americans suffers from some form of mental illness, such as depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. And because of this, we believe there's a significant need for the first time in almost 30 years or more than 30 years to have a state-of-the-art behavioral health and addiction hospital be available in Cuyahoga County. Just to also look at the scope of the problems, we have not changed. We actually reduced behavioral health beds over the past 3 decades. And as you know, also state hospitals have reduced their capacity, but yet suicide rates have gone up by 62% in the past decade. Mental illness now affects almost nearly double the number of people as a few decades ago. 32% of the people who are seeking mental health treatment or counseling don't get the services that they need. 62% of those seeking alcohol and drug treatment don't get the services they need. The rate of opioid death is still 2.5 times the national average. And since 2010, when we put in the DAWN program, we saved thousands of people, a couple of thousand people, yet 5,100 people have died from drug overdoses in Cuyahoga County. So that is a funeral every 17 hours for 10 years, for 10 years. That's just unacceptable. And COVID has increased the demands for behavioral health services. We did an analysis of our patients prior to COVID and asked what their number one issue was. It was social isolation and depression. And that was for approximately 38% of our patients who responded to the survey said that the case. After COVID, that number is up to 62%. So Cuyahoga County needs acute psychiatric and behavioral health and addiction beds. The access to current beds is also limited because many of the facilities do not treat medical conditions. Many of them don't have the ability to treat severe episodes, which would require a locked unit. Insurance coverage is a big issue. There is really almost no facility that makes money on this in Cuyahoga County, except those who take only private insurance. Age-appropriate beds are not available. There are very few adolescent and almost no geriatric beds, and access, including transportation, is not typically provided. When we did the analysis, we saw that, and we'll go a little bit into more of this, we saw that 2 large programs are Lutheran and St. Vincent's are on the western part of the county, university hospitals in the eastern part of the county. And we began by looking at building this facility on the Metro Health campus. And as we looked at it, if we did that, the western side of Cuyahoga County would be overbedded, and the eastern side of Cuyahoga County would continue to be more underbedded. So from an equity and care standpoint, and also not to really compete with the 2 existing programs that are here, we deemed it best to go into Cleveland Heights, where we have a location, and be able to serve South Euclid, East Cleveland, and other parts of the organization. And just so we're clear, healthcare disparities are also in behavioral health and addiction services. African Americans and brown people do not get the same treatment. And so we wanted to focus closer toward the zip codes of that population. Just this is really important. If you look at the market share of psychiatric inpatient discharges from 2017 to 2020, 4 years, I'll start with the top here. Other health systems have gone from about 42% to nearly 50%. That means Cuyahoga County residents are looking outside of these 4 health systems to get their inpatient psychiatric care. Lutheran has gone from about 24.5% to about 20.5% of the market share. St. Vincent's has gone from 20% to about 13% of the market share. University Hospitals and Cleveland Medical Center has remained mostly steady. It's gone uptick a little bit. Metro Health Medical Center, which has not expanded capacity, inpatient capacity for almost ever, has been selected by patients because we believe we offer a comprehensive approach. So we've gone from about 5.5% to a little over, close to 8.5%. In 2019 alone, we admitted approximately 800 patients to our inpatient psychiatric unit, transferred 621 patients to other psychiatric facilities throughout the state, and couldn't find a bed for 750 patients. So I had to treat them in the emergency room and then send them home. That's just unacceptable. Today, substance abuse disorder and the patient's needs require that we have all these services at the same place. But our current infrastructure says if you have a medical issue, you get treated in a medical unit. If you have a psychiatric issue, you get paid in a psychiatric unit. If you have detox, you go to a detox facility. But God forbid you have all 3, you get bounced around and don't get the comprehensive care that you need. So this is also the excerpts here from the crisis intervention, the crisis management and evaluation, the stabilization, and the long-term care. That comes from the presentation we made for you. But inpatient care is essential for treating the acute episodes. There are plenty of patients who are not going to be eligible for the diversion center. And when I don't remember, I think it was Councilwoman Baker who asked about making people go to a locked facility. This is a locked facility. This is something that doctors can't impose on patients if they are a danger to themselves. So you don't want to criminalize a psychiatric issue, but sometimes when it's such a grave threat to the individual and the community, we can do that. So almost all of the behavioral health inpatient and substance use disorder care in that we provide here in Cuyahoga County is the equivalent, and I'll put this in medical terms. Your great grandparents had a general practitioner was their doctor. If they had a heart attack, they went to the general practitioner. If they had needed cancer surgery, they went to the general practitioner. If they needed to have a baby, they went to the general practitioner. We know today that that is not effective. It may be good and better than nothing, but that is not an effective use of prevention. That's why we have so much recidivism in the system. No one on this call, if they had cardiac disease, would be satisfied with going to a family medicine physician and say, I'm getting the best care possible. I'm getting the best expertise. Well, we need these specialty units to be able to provide the best care in Cuyahoga County. Geriatric units, which show that the largest number of people who are getting mental health and substance abuse. The largest increase is in the Medicare population. The psych med unit, which for those patients who have really tenuous medical condition and tenuous psychiatric condition, nobody wants them. Not the medical institutions or want to admit them, not the psychiatric institutions. So we just put a Band-Aid on and send them out, and they suffer terrible consequences. The psych ICU unit. This is not a medical ICU. This is a psych ICU. These are folks who need significant amount of medication, whose families can't do anything except call the police to take them to jail. And judges are forced to take them to put these types of individuals in jail because they are so, their thought disorder is so severe that it requires significant support for them to go through this acute episode. These are folks with severe schizophrenia and other trauma that has some breaks in. You know, adolescent unit, we don't have a lot of adolescent beds. University Hospital has a little bit, you know, but I want to say this. Very few organizations in the past 30 years have expanded behavioral health and inpatient psychiatric services or addiction services. I'm talking about acute. I'm talking about hospitals and health systems. We all shy away from it because it doesn't make a lot of money. As a matter of fact, almost every hospital loses money. I have to applaud one organization, which is Belfair. They are putting in a 12-bed adolescent unit, and we will be working with them to make sure that the patients that they need and have expertise in, especially those with autism and other behavioral health issues, are given the care they need. And I honestly, I have to applaud Adam Jacobs for doing this. We recently found out that they're about to open in the spring, and we're beginning to work with them on it. Substance use disorder units. We're not talking about here, and excuse my language, you know, a place where someone needs to sleep over a drinking binge. Okay, we're talking about serious substance abuse. We're talking about crack, cocaine, fentanyl, all the things that cannot be treated on an outpatient basis, that actually need medical intervention to do so. Mood disorders are patients who have psychoses, depressions, bipolar, and manic disorder. And if anyone has ever seen a manic episode, you will never forget it. A psychotic disorder unit. And then finally, we're not trying, so most of you were not involved in this, but about 8 years ago, Metro Health, before I came here, and the ADAMHS board made an application for to the state for capital dollars to put in a psych emergency room. We got that approval. And Bill Danahan, when I got here, said, Akram, we need to build this psych emergency room. And I said, Bill, I just got here. I don't know what we're going to do with psych or anything else. We have St. Vincent's, which is, seems like to be an excellent program. And I wrote a letter to the legislation, and I said, please move the dollars from Metro Health and the ADAMHS board to the ADAMHS board and St. Vincent's. And they created that psych emergency room, and the ADAMHS board has been supporting them ever since for that psych emergency room. There is nothing like that on the east side. So we're going to convert a part of our emergency room for an urgent behavioral health and addiction intake units. And we're not asking the ADAMHS board to support us for $3 million a year as that is being supported. We have all of that figured out in our program. It will be 96,000 square feet dedicated to this, so 110 beds and 7 units. 75,000 square feet will be a new structure. 21,000 square feet will be a renovation. We've already gone before Cleveland Heights, and I must thank Councilwoman Stevens for her leadership in helping us present this. And the really most important thing for us is that we're not changing what we do currently in Cleveland Heights. We will continue seeing almost 100,000 patients for medical care. We will continue with our payroll of $15 million. We're adding this $42 million investment, $37 million from Metro Health cash flow, and we're requesting $5 million from the opioid settlement. We're not asking for incentive from the city of Cleveland Heights, and we will be providing our police force to have 24-hour security. And as always has been our mission and will always continue to be our mission, is that we will treat everyone who needs care regardless of their ability to pay. So that is my presentation. I am happy to take any questions, Chairman Brady.
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Boutros. I wanted to clarify what I think is the case, and that's that if we would appropriate the $5 million on opioid money, that would be the extent of your ask. That is to say, the future of running this facility would not be something you would be coming to the county for resources for.
Yeah, thank you very much, President Brady. What was critically important for us is, and why it took us so long to figure this out, and why most hospitals don't do this, is these facilities aren't typically break even. I mean, I think if you talk to anybody who's doing this, be they St. Vincent's or others, you will find out that they're losing dollars on that. We have worked to figure out the mix of patients and the services that are necessary for this to be break even long term. My presentation to the Board of Trustees of the Metro Health System was that we're not doing this for a year, we're not doing this for 5 years, we're not doing this for 10 years. We must commit this for the long term, decades, before we take on this endeavor. And it must be self-sustaining. We've worked with the Department of Medicaid to look at this process and to make sure that it is self-sustaining, and that there are rates that are going to cover all these costs. And you are absolutely correct. We will not be coming to the council to ask for operational support for this unit. This will be sustained by Metro Health long term. And I'm going to also say to you, I am afraid not only of what the behavioral health impact of COVID is going to be long term, but I'm afraid of other health systems and hospitals stopping their services in behavioral health, and what would happen to the community that already has a 200-bed deficit if we don't do this. Okay, anybody else closes their doors, we are in horrible trouble. So you are correct.
Thank you, Dr. Boutros.
Did it sound like a filibuster? I didn't mean to, by the way.
Not at all. Not at all. No, it's very very exciting. I want to go to the council for questions and comments. Who would like to start?
Could I start, Council President?
Sure. Go ahead, Councilwoman Stevens.
Thank you. Of course, I'm biased because this is in my district. And for those of you who know me, I, as one of my colleagues said just the other day, I have a unique blend of a business perspective and a government perspective. Thank you, Chantel. We do want to facilitate development that basically finds a way to sustain itself so that government doesn't have to continuously provide some incentive or support. Dr. Boutros and his staff have presented us today with a critical element of what we need in our society to take care of those who are least able to take care of themselves, and often their families cannot take care of them. It's not something we all collectively or individually think about very much. Fortunately for us, the GCC And members of our healthcare community have been nudging us for many years. Why this became critical to me on a personal level is, as most of you know, I have been a public servant for a majority of my career. And in Cleveland Heights in 2006, someone who had serious mental health problems, I think both schizophrenia and forms of depression, shot a police officer as he got out of his car on a security wellness check. And that young man died before he could even get both of his feet out of the car. And after the man was arrested and when they were trying to take him in, they figured out that there were serious mental health problems. And his family, his former colleagues, when he could work, all sorts of folks had asked, where do we send him? How do we get him help? There was a loss of life because our systems failed us. So this is a place where I am proud to represent an opportunity and an option. This will help our community financially, but most importantly, on the east side of Cleveland, where those of us who are people of brown and black color know that there is no facility we can get to within a reasonable amount of time via our personal vehicles or via public transportation when we need to make sure that one of our relatives is in a location that will help them become better contributing citizens rather than allow them to spiral even further out of control. So I want to take this time to tell my colleagues that this is something I urge you to support. It is necessary that we have options in our community and that those options not be clustered together in one area of the town, but across and provide diversity to the community. And so I want to thank the team at Metro Health, especially Dr. Boutros, their leader, and of course my former colleague, Jane, so that we actually can begin to take care of all of our own in a financially responsible way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Who's next?
Council President?
Yes, Councilman Jones.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Boutros, for that presentation. My question revolves around the comment you made around the impending need as a result of COVID and the fact that you said this is somewhat risky or it's a challenging arena to work in. Do you see, you mentioned other hospitals potentially backing out of this arena. Is that, can you speak a little more to that? Is there any chance that they might increase their work because of COVID and the mental health challenges that might come in the coming years? Or do you see them more, as you kind of already said, you think they might back away from it? Could you speak a little more to that subject?
Sure, happy to do so, Councilman Jones. The need is going to be there, and I would strongly support the other health systems increasing their inpatient capacity. I would absolutely love for that to happen, and I would like for that to happen because the need is so great there. And the anticipation, I'll give you an example. Even though I worked in New York, we helped look at the impact of the Oklahoma City bombing on mental health. We found that inpatient psychiatric admissions were still up 8 years later after the Oklahoma City bombing. We're talking about COVID is like that 10 times. It's impacted everyone. It didn't impact just only a small group of people. So this is going to be long-term impacts. Because Metro Health has a special relationship with the Ohio Office of Medicaid, we have been able to figure out ways to support this process long-term. So we have access to funds that the other hospitals are not going to have access to. So overall, it makes financial sense, and we figured out how to do that. And we have commitments for them to continue providing that. So that's what distinguishes Metro Health from the other health systems, the not-for-profit health systems, because we are trying to figure out how to make this sustainable. The current system of Medicaid reimbursement, and many of these folks are homeless and do not have insurance, doesn't make it to be a lucrative business. You don't hear about people opening up. I mean, go ahead, do a Google search and look for a new facility that's open. You will find only for-profit companies that are only opening for insured patients. They don't take Medicaid, they don't take Medicare, they only take insured patients on private pay. All right. We cannot have two systems of healthcare. If you have money, you get excellent care. If you don't have money, you end up in jail or dead. That's just not acceptable. So we've been working on this for literally 2 years to figure out how to make this work. And I have to tell you guys that I wasn't very optimistic we could, but all the pieces have fallen into place. And the Board of Trustees said, this is our mission and we need to do it long term.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think it was a program, there was an educational expert in New York who talked about the impact on children. How many children who may, I don't know if he meant they contracted, and the mental health challenges around bringing COVID back into the home, them again being isolated away from schools, all those things. Again, children, is that going to be a growing concern in the years to come as well?
We put in 10 beds here. Adam Jacobs and Belfair is putting in 12 beds. That's 22 beds. That's a lot more than we have today. We may both have to increase that number. We hope we treat patients, these children, as more of an outpatient. There is no sadder place to be than an inpatient pediatric psych facility. Okay, we do not want our kids in there. It's only for as long as they need to be in there, and we can take care of them as outpatients.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Council President. That's the end of my question.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Further questions?
Mr. President.
Councilman Miller.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Boutros, thank you for that comprehensive presentation. And I just have one question. I was surprised to hear your presentation that you're going to have 20 geriatric beds, 10 psych med beds, 10 ICU beds, 10 adolescent, 20 SUD, 20 mood disorder, 20 psychotic. You have these specific categories. And I could just imagine the community need not neatly fitting into these numbers, that at some time or other, you're going to have way more in this category and way more in that category. And so what I'm asking is, how much flexibility do you have? To what extent are you going to be able to change a bed from one unit to another as needed to serve what you have coming in?
So thank you, Councilman Miller. A very astute question. We will flex as we need to. This is the number of patients that we think we could focus on, right? Have expertise, making sure that if you have heart disease, you're in a cardiac ICU. If you have trauma, you're on a trauma ICU. If you have a broken bone, you're on an orthopedic floor. That's the equivalent that we have. If you came to Metro Health today and went to our orthopedic floor, you would see a general surgery patient on an orthopedic floor, right? We flex that way for the needs of the patient, but we still have concentrated expertise on that floor by those individuals working on it. So that's why we did it that way.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boutros and Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Miller. Further questions by the council?
I have a question, if I may.
Yes, Councilman Baker.
And I'm sorry, I cut out for a bit and lost my Wi-Fi, but I'm back. So I hope I'm not asking something that may be somewhat duplicate. On the screen that you showed on page 16, you had both behavioral and substance together on that screen. And behavioral, of course, I guess I see that as two different types of care, and that substance abuse, you may be able to get them through the detox and they leave your place whole, but they go back to an environment that could get them right back into the bad behavior that got them in there to begin with. Maybe different than other medical type of services that you're offering for behavioral health. So how do you take care of those that leave in good health, but may need future type of health to make sure that they don't go back to the addiction that got them there to begin with?
So thank you. Again, very good question, Councilwoman Baker. I would say 60 to 80% of the individuals who have substance use disorder have a behavioral health issue. Now, it goes everywhere from depression to major schizoaffective disorders and borderline personalities and all serious stuff. I think the question you are asking is, how do we link to the rest of the community? That's why we're not doing residential beds. There are plenty of beds now. We just need to get them to the right places. We'll be doing intensive outpatient treatment, and we're doing partial hospitalization. Metro Health, about 6 months ago, became the only organization to invest in something called Unite Us. Unite Us is a platform that we paid millions of dollars for, and is available for free to every organization that provides any social services, any not-for-profit organization, to connect into that platform. And if somebody needs legal aid, we will put the name of that patient on the call out for legal services. The organization gets all the data with the patient's permission from that service. And the rest of us know that let's say legal aid picked up that patient. So another organization doesn't have to do that. We already have signed up, I think, 45 organizations. We will continue to utilize that to make sure that they are appropriately placed. In addition, the state of Ohio has put in a program to be able to let us know where there are available beds, and we create relationships to move folks. And I think from Oriana House talked about the need for these handoffs, right? You can't just let people go and have them be homeless. I mean, again, from our experience, when we go to homeless shelters multiple times, we take care of people under bridges on a regular basis at Metro Health. We understand the mental health issues of these folks. So we want to get them into safe facilities where they can get the support and the monitoring they need to not come back.
I guess, from what I hear and out in my district, that the drug addiction crosses all demographics, that it is not where, stereotyped in urban, but it crosses all demographics, and it crosses all ages, and it crosses, all walks of life. So I guess, what I'm asking is that when they receive the treatment that they need, and they have a place to go back to, but what they may be going back to is the bad habits that got them there to begin with.
Well, the environment that has caused them to seek this out in the first place. So we will work with all the social agencies, including family and children's services, to make sure that we work through these issues as well. Councilwoman Baker, in New York, I ran the largest Orthodox Jewish addiction program in the city. You don't hear about that, but we took care of over 100 people a month who were addicted to fentanyl in the Hasidic and Lubavitch community. It's very quiet. Folks don't talk about it. They think they're immune from it. No one is immune from it. Nobody's immune from mental health issues. No one is immune from addiction services.
Right.
Addiction needs.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Baker. Further questions?
Well, this is what I thought about this, and it seems to me like an offer, as they said at some point, that you can't refuse.
Is that the New York reference to me?
Well, it's it's a small amount of our opiate money. I can't imagine that we could possibly get a bigger bang for our buck, and for the development that will take place in Cleveland Heights, and for, more importantly than all the rest of it, what it brings to the matrix of our healthcare, mental health care services here in the county. So I'm just really pleased that this is something that's happening, and I'd like to be able to move it forward to next Tuesday. We do have a special meeting on the 18th, but generally we use that to close up our books. It's more of an annoyance for most of us than it's not a regular meeting. If there is no objection, first I have to have the clerk read the legislation. But if there's no objection,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President?
Yes, Councilwoman Stevens.
When you have her read it into the record, I'd be more than happy to be the person who proposes the motion go on to the floor.
Okay, all right. I guess that's not a surprise. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the resolution 0260?
Sure. Resolution number 2020-0260, authorizing a grant agreement with the Metro Health System in an amount not to exceed $5 million to assist in the construction of an addiction and behavioral health center in Cuyahoga County.
All right. Would you like to make that motion, Councilwoman?
I'd like to move that this be placed on the next available agenda so that we can vote and assist Metro Health move forward as quickly as possible.
Okay, so that would be second reading for adoption under a suspension, correct?
That is correct.
And I will second that motion. Is there any further comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Well, thank you, Dr. Boutros.
Thank you so very much for your time. Sincerely appreciate it.
Very much. And
Thank you.
thank you everybody else for your participation. The council for your time today. Not a bad day's work, I think. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, this committee of the whole is adjourned.
Thank you.